it or not, it has a ball of steel, which is quite interesting. In the early days of computers, believe it or not, they didn't have screens as we think of it. And believe it or not, there is still a thriving market for retro video games. Believe it or not, I'm having a bit of a problem thinking of anything. And believe it or not, there's even a chicken coop with 3 chickens in it. Believe it or not, this took me about 4 hours to code. And believe it or not, I've actually had a list of scheduled events on my website for years now. And believe it or not, Numlock was turned off by default on these machines. And believe it or not, they're still making Walkman-style cassette players. Believe it or not, I have never had a joystick. Believe it or not, I found this on my front porch. And believe it or not, this is a brand new chip. And believe it or not, this is the easy part. And believe it or not, this was very common on IBM compatible motherboards of the era. And this white ribbon here, believe it or not, is a correction ribbon. Now, believe it or not, I'm fairly charitable with my time. And believe it or not, the reverse is also true. Believe it or not, the largest card it can handle is a 2 GB card. All right, believe it or not, I actually bought one of these when they first came out. Believe it or not, the Magic Voice cartridge is not a true speech synthesizer. Believe it or not, almost all of the Sierra adventure games can be made to work. Well, you believe it or not, you can. One of the most common questions, believe it or not, is people want to know how to clean. So believe it or not, 4 days have now passed. Believe it or not, many DOS games are capable of multiplayer. Well, believe it or not, there actually are some good reasons. You literally remove the screen, and believe it or not, the computer will actually work just fine. Now, believe it or not, you can connect a microphone like this directly. Now, believe it or not, I just put a new one in there recently. And believe it or not, I still only paid $20 for this month. Now, believe it or not, I actually did not know these existed. And believe it or not, each of these is a completely different piece. And believe it or not, I used an entire box of 500 feet worth of Ethernet cable. And believe it or not, that's all you have to do to take the case off. Believe it or not, I scrubbed this one here with just alcohol and managed to clean it up quite a bit. And believe it or not, there's never been a Nintendo version of Montezuma's Revenge. Now, believe it or not, the Apple II systems have no hardware timers on board. And believe it or not, this was the predecessor to DVD video. Well, believe it or not, that's exactly what he did. Believe it or not, I can't show you this one work. So, believe it or not, this thing has a water cooling system. Now, believe it or not, monitors like this were actually extremely common back in the 80s. Believe it or not, they used to paint plastic computers back in the 1970s, which is